science. First after in law school. I also direct the social program, the Constitutional Studies minor, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first academic lecture of the year. I think many of you know about the role of the Tocqueville program here on campus to discuss matters of religion and public life, scholarship, and we try to enhance the intellectual life of the Notre Dame community, the South Bend community, and I really think of no better way than today's event to accomplish that end. I also direct the Constitutional Studies minor. That's relatively new. We're in our third year. For you students who might be interested in the minor, please come talk to me after the talk or look us up on our webpage, constudies.nd.edu, or you can even like us on our Facebook page. I'm hoping to get 500 likes, so please like it. Also where we advertise our events. So if you're interested in something like this, that's the best way to make sure you know what you're up to. To that end, I do have a sign-up sheet that's going to go around. I think maybe we can pass this around right now. But we have several of these. If you'd like to be on our email list, please sign up here. And that way we can make sure you get notified of our events. You can also receive information from AEI if you'd like to. Indicate here on the sheet by signing your email. We have some programs coming up very soon. Next Thursday night, Bill McGurn, former chief writer for President Bush, Wall Street Journal columnist who used to write the main three columns for the Wall Street Journal, and current editorial page editor of the New York Times.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Then I'd see you over the
Bill McGurn is
reception,
coming
like wait.
6 o'clock next week.
Thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure. It's been so long.
Yeah. How's it going?
In the law school.
Doing well. Just started teaching here this fall.
Are you?
Yeah, teaching in a business school.
No kidding. In communications at the business school?
In the Fannie Center for Communications, Revenue
That's going to be followed
Negotiations.
immediately. Actually, the kickoff event
Came
of
off
our
the stint with the Holy See at the
Symposium
UN as
is
a
Really?
negotiator.
Religious
Yeah.
freedom under Obamacare.
You,
Should the for-profit
give you a
business
card. You
could
can more than a few hours.
I'll be sleeping in Indianapolis tonight.
Okay.
I just saw a picture of you the other day when you came to our house in Atlanta.
Oh, really?
They were showing one of my kids that.
How's that?
She's fine. She's fine.
Like that.
I will.
Who did the kids go?
15, 13, and 10. You don't know my 10-year-old.
No.
My daughter. Yeah.
And how do you like the DC area?
It's exciting.
Yeah, where you live?
Bethesda.
Bethesda.
Yeah.
Even on the Democratic side.
I like being undercover.
Before I introduce JC,
Coming to DC this fall break. I'll send you an email. Maybe we can get together for a couple of hours or something.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's been too long.
Yeah, it is. How funny.
Yeah.
Walk in.
We both had a little more hair back then.
It's with me too.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Great. So, how long is your doctor?
40 minutes.
5 minutes.
I'll keep it lively.
I keep seeing your stuff in the Wall
JC,
Street Journal.
Constitutional Studies minor to roll.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, and on behalf of the Tocqueville Fellowship Program on the Constitutional Studies minor, I welcome you to today's event from Moral Cases for Enterprise, presented by Dr. Arthur Brooks. Dr. Brooks is president of the American Enterprise Institute, one of the nation's premier institutions in government, public policy, and social welfare, research, and education. Dr. Brooks is currently the best in Ravenel Curry Scholar in Free Enterprise at AEI. Immediately before joining AEI, Dr. Brooks was the Louis A. Bantle Professor in Business and Government at Syracuse University. He is the author of 10 books and hundreds of articles on topics including the role of government, fairness, economic opportunity, happiness, and the morality of free enterprise. His latest book, How to Win the Fight for Free Enterprise, was New York Times bestseller. The Road to Freedom discusses the morality of a free enterprise system and how it is central to understanding the policy issues facing America today. Dr. Brooks is a frequent guest on national television and radio talk show and has been published widely in publications including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post.
Dr. Brooks has a PhD and a Master's in Philosophy and Public Analysis from Graham Graduate School. He also holds an MA in Economics from Florida Atlantic University and a BA in Economics from Thomas Edison State College. Before pursuing his work in public policy, Dr. Brooks spent 12 years as a classical musician in the United States. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Arthur Brooks.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's a delight. This is actually the first time I've ever visited the Notre Dame campus, which, when you're a Catholic like me, is actually a sin. But I'm glad to be here. Better late than never. And it's wonderful to see all of you here. I appreciate very much your interest in the particular topic. Although, that said, who's not interested in happiness? And that actually is the beginning of the talk. As you heard, I was an economics professor before I came to run this think tank in Washington, D.C. And at one point when I was working on an article about something about human behavior or something when I was still teaching at Syracuse, I was having lunch with a friend, a social psychologist, and he said, you know the problem with you economists? Which is, no good conversation starts that way. But, you know the problem with you economists? And I said, what? He says, you don't understand people. You don't really understand what motivates people. You think that people really care about money. You think that people really care, intrinsically care about money. And I said, well, okay, smart guy. Tell me what people really care about. Tell me, if you think you're so smart, you tell me something that's better. And he said, it's obvious. He said, people really care about is happiness. And of course he's right. And of course I knew that. The reason I'd never thought of that before is because you can't measure it very well, right? And as an economist, if I don't have data and I can't tell you what's higher and what's lower, then it doesn't really exist. Or at least doesn't exist inside the science. And so I said, well, I can't actually use that very well because I can't tell you whether or not somebody's happier than somebody else, and so I'm going to stay with money. He said, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. You got to start reading the literature out there, because if you read the articles that have been published in the past 30 years, you'll see you can measure happiness. I didn't believe him. So I went out, and it turns out he's right. 30 years of articles have been trying to figure out how to measure people's happiness, and they've gotten really good at it. The social psychologists have gotten very good at figuring out who's happy and who's not, and being able to compare us with each other. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. Now, I do work on free enterprise, and the name of this lecture is The Moral Case for Free Enterprise. And I'm going to get there, but what I'm going to tell you is that if you're going to make the moral case for something, you better make it in terms of what people care about. You can't make the moral case that people don't care about. So I have to talk to you about happiness before I can try to convince you that there's a best way for you to work to make other people happiest. And that's going to have something to do with the free enterprise system, but we're going to have to wait to get there. So back to how do you measure people's happiness? For the past 30 years or so, we've had scientists that have been putting people in functional MRI machines and isolating them in rooms and asking them really probing questions and looking at the musculature in their face to see what kind of smiles that they're using when they answer certain questions to see whether or not they're happy, see whether or not their brains and what they say are in sync with each other. But it turns out you don't have to go to all that work, because the best research shows that if you just take large groups of people anonymously, you have a large sample, and anonymously ask people, all things considered in your life, I know there are ups, I know there are downs, but all things considered in your life, how happy would you say you are? You get remarkably stable and accurate and honest answers. So here's how it kind of goes, and I'm going to ask you this question myself. Think on a 1 to 7 scale. 1 is you're miserable. Just misery. 7 is as happy as you could possibly be, the happiest person you've ever met. What's your number? Not exactly right now. I mean, in general in your life. Okay? Something good or bad may have happened this afternoon that'll change that a little bit. But basically, all things considered, what's your number? Now you got the number in your head. Right? So let's see what people say in the United States. 6s and 7s, very happy. Between 30 and 35% of the population. A third of the population is 6s and 7s. Some of you are 6s and 7s. How many of you are 6s and 7s? Okay? Weird, like a third. 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4s. How many of you are 3, 4s, and 5s? 3, 4s, and 5s. In the population, 56%. Just about half of you said that. And the rest, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because that's really depressing, are 1s and 2s. And 1s and 2s, year after year after year in America, 10 to 15%. The depressed 10 to 15% of the population that say they're not happy. Okay? That's the way it works. And it doesn't matter if there's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. It doesn't matter if the economy is up or down after about 6 months. It always reverts to these patterns. It's very stable. It's something that goes on and on and on. It's a remarkable thing how durable people actually are in their happiness. And so the question that I had for my buddy back at Syracuse, which is, how can you measure it? It's not even interesting. It stays the same year after year. The really interesting question is, what makes people happy? That's what we really want to know, right? And we know that too. About 200 articles and books that have been peer-reviewed and are honest and are good science. I've read them so you don't have to. I'm going to tell you what they say, okay? They say that your happiness comes from 3 things. And now, you're going to get information you can use today, all right? You're going to leave here and you're going to be able to be happier and you're going to be able to make other people happier too. Okay? But the first thing of the 3 that brings happiness is something that you can't control very well, and it's your genes. Right? I don't want that to be true because I'm an American. I want everything to be under my control. You know, it's the greatest thing, and I'm married to an immigrant, and we compare our experiences a lot. And one of the greatest things about being an American is that you get to reinvent yourself. You get to invent your life any way you want. Right? That's kind of the American spirit. That's why people get on boats to come here and risk a lot. Right? That's the immigrant experience, effectively. And when I hear that a lot of your happiness or a lot of anything is genetic, it kind of bothers me. I want to believe that, you know, you can have a lousy upbringing, but if you just get a really great first grade teacher and apply yourself, all will be well. Right? That's kind of how we like to see things, right? But when it comes to most parts of your personality, that's not true. Okay, now, about 20 years ago, a team of researchers in Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, found a unique database. They found a database of twins. Now, twins are really interesting because you have fraternal twins and you have identical twins, and fraternal twins have half of their genes in common, and identical twins have all of their genes in common. Their DNA is carbon copy, right? And then if you can look at the differences in their experiences growing up, you can see how much of their personality is nature and how much of it is nurture. So these researchers, they found 3,210 pairs of twins that were born between 1936 and 1955 in the state of Minnesota, and their personalities were gauged when they were 40. So you get a personality test at 40. By the time you're 40, your personality is kind of locked in, and you can see, based on that, how much of your personality is genetic and how much of it comes from your environment based on these studies. Now, the best part of this twin pool was 75 pairs. This is like a social scientist's dream come true. 75 pairs of twins, identical twins, that were separated at birth and adopted to separate families. Right? That's like an experiment. I mean, if the government did that, you'd be really bummed out. But maybe they are. Anyway, maybe I have a twin someplace. But they found these guys because it turns out that between 1936 and 1955, almost no abortion. And so when there were unwanted pregnancies, including of identical twins, they would be adopted, and usually they would be separated because they'd be adopted out to separate families. They found them, age 40, they gauged their personalities, and they found the best possible data on how much of your personality is genetic. And the answer is a lot. How much of your religiosity, your innate religious sense, is genetic? 40%. How much of your political philosophy is genetic? 40%. How much of your extroversion, your neuroticism, your tendency toward alcoholism, your tendency toward criminality is genetic? More than half. How much of your happiness is genetic? Now, what I'm talking about is your baseline happiness, what you tend to all the time. 48%. 48% of your happiness is genetic. Now, can you control it? Maybe a little. There's a lot of really cutting-edge research these days that talks about environmental switches. Okay? So you can have a proclivity toward lots of things. You can have a proclivity to be a crook. We know this. A genetic proclivity to be a crook, but you've got good parents, the switches stay turned off, and that's good, right? Or you can have a proclivity to be an alcoholic, but all the switches stay off because you don't drink. You don't become an alcoholic. So there are environmental switches that interact with the genetics, but all things considered, happiness is wired in. Have you ever met somebody who's happy all the time? It's very, very irritating. And it's because of their genes, basically. It's not just things are going right for them all the time. Things go right and they're wrong, just like your life. But they're happy all the time because their 48% is great because they had happy parents. Happy parents have happy kids. I'm married to one of those people. Right? My wife is one of those happy people. Right? I'm not. You heard I used to make my living as a French horn player, as a classical musician. For 12 years, I made my living as a classical musician. I dropped out of college. I'll tell you about that in a little while, maybe. But suffice it to say that I'm a dark and brooding artist, right? My wife is, here's how happy my wife is, okay? We have kids. We have teenage kids. And last December, we were coming home from a really bad parent-teacher conference. Okay, now maybe some of your parents experienced that with some of you occasionally, right? And we had a big grades problem with one of my teenage sons. And so we were coming home from the parent-teacher conference, and I'm driving, and it's kind of this icy silence. Nobody's talking. And my wife finally says, you know, here's how we need to think about it. At least we know he's not cheating, right? Yeah, that's an optimist. So, that's DNA. That's good DNA. And a lot is not even genetic, but still innate. Okay? What's the most important and visible innate characteristic you have? Your gender, right? Your sex. Now, who's happier innately? Men or women? Come on, you got to have an answer. I'm going to hear probably two answers, so one of them's going to be right, right? Exactly right. Exactly right. Women are happier. Women have been happier for years. Now, about 1960, women were a lot happier. Now women are still happy, but they're only a little happier. And the reason is not because men have been getting happier, it's the reason because women have been getting unhappier. Since 1960, the average unhappiness of American women has been descending and converging on the misery of men. Okay? So, now, I'm not going to tell you why that is. I'm going to submit that to you, and I'm going to ask you to form your own little hypothesis about that, because I don't exactly have the data as to why, I can imagine, but I'm going to leave it to you. And if some of you afterward, when we have time for a little Q&A, want to come up with a politically incorrect response, I invite you to do so. Okay, so women are happier than men, and you find that in every category. So I like to look at it with respect to marital status. Single women are happier than single men. Married women are happier than married men. Widowed women are way happier than widowed men. Way happier. What's so funny? Come on. And I said that, I told my wife that one. She says, huh, no kidding, you know? The only group of women who's unhappier than men is divorced women. Divorced women are unhappier than divorced men, and there's a reason for that. The reason is divorced women typically have school-age kids in the house, and being a single mom with kids is really super stressful and tiring, and it makes your life less happy. So there's an environmental explanation for it. It has nothing to do with the gender per se. Now, one of the most interesting things that I've found over the course of my research in the past 10 years has to do with this gender difference. Okay? And it has to do with men and the average unhappiest age in their lives. Okay? So we know, we have data on this, that men are, kind of have this dip in their lives, and their happiness comes down, and then it goes back up again. Okay? Women don't have it, right? Women are unstable from day to day, but really happy from year to year. And but men are a mess. Men are a mess at a particular point in their life. So what's the average unhappy? And I've looked at the data myself, and I've crunched the numbers. You can trust me. What is the average unhappiest age in a man's life? What do you think it is? Somebody read my book. Okay, so 45. Spot on. How old are you?
32.
You're on your way down. So, sorry, Father. So it's y'all are. You're all on your way down until 45. So 45 is a real bummer for, it would seem in the data. So I went to the same friend of mine, the social psychologist, and I said, what's going on at age 45, this average unhappiest age in a man's life? And he said, he gave me these explanations, these kind of mumbo-jumbo, convoluted explanations about family life. You know, the relationship and the dysfunction. Well, I said, no. Boil it down. I'm an economist. Treat me like I'm 4 years old, right? What is going on? He said, that's when your wife figures out definitively that you're boring. All right, that's brutal, but fine. But you know what? It wasn't quite good enough. And I went back to the data and I found there's more to it than that. It's not that everybody's, don't worry, father, not everybody who's 45 is bummed out. It's only a fraction of men that are driving the whole population to look that way. So you know enough of your math to know that you can see something in the average across the population that's being driven by one subsample. Right? And so what basically is going on is that most guys are okay at 45, but some are really depressed. So I want to know what's going on with the depressed guys, because, you know, happy people are not very interesting. Depressed people are interesting, right? So I want to see what's going on with the subsample of guys that are driving the whole population down. Okay, what's going on? And here's what's happening. Basically, here's what's happening. When guys get to about the age of 45, they wake up and they say, I'm in the wrong place. They're kind of dislocated in a weird way. See, when you're in your 20s and 30s, and this is what a lot of you who are still in school are going to figure out, life is simple. Life is simple. You want to get ahead, you want to be happier, you want to be more successful, hit the gas, make more money, get a promotion, work harder. It's a pretty simple formula for most men. The trouble is, when some guys get into their mid-40s, they say, I don't want to be on this road. I mean, I've been driving my car as fast as I can down this road, but I don't want to be a lawyer. Right? No, I want, you know, but I got this private school tuition, you know, this expensive Catholic schools. My kids are going to Notre Dame, and it's and the house payment, it's killing me. But I can't stop. But I don't like it. I don't want to do this. And people say, so what do you want to do? You say, I don't like this road. I want to be on that little dirt road, the one that's got the guy in the motorcycle without the helmet. Has living it, right? I want to be him, right? So now the next question is, metaphorically speaking, who's that guy? Who is that guy? Well, that guy's me, okay? Because I got lucky. I didn't have the 45-year-old. See, I'm 49, so I'm past it. So it's like all good for me from here on out, right? But I missed the 45-year-old thing because I got really lucky. And here's basically how it went. So when I was 19, I dropped out of college. Or, you know, dropped out, kicked out, splitting hairs here, right? And I left college and I pursued my life as a classical musician. You know, that's what I really wanted to do. And so I was traveling around. I spent, I was driving around. One time I drove from Baltimore to San Francisco straight with 4 other guys, right, for a gig. Can you imagine? It was a life. It was kind of what you do, 19, 20, your age. That's what I was doing. And it was great. I wound up ultimately, I played jazz with a guy named Charlie Bird, who's a guitar player, a bossa nova guitar player for a couple of years. And then I wound up in the Barcelona Symphony. Okay? Spent a bunch of years in the Barcelona Symphony. That's where I got married, in Barcelona. And when I was in Barcelona, I woke up one day when I was 28, and I said, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. How do I know that? Because I'm working in the orchestra with these guys who were 20 and 30 years older than me that were in horrible shape. They drank too much, they weren't happy, they had bad marriages, the whole, I said, this is where it goes. I think this is where it goes, I don't want to do that. So I decided to quit. And I called my dad. Right? My dad, he's in Seattle, I'm from Seattle. I called my dad in Seattle, like those days it was long distance. And I said, Dad, I got big news. I'm going to quit music. I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to go back to college, Dad. It's going to be great. I'm going to study, I don't know, literature or poetry or math or political science or economics or something. I'm going to use my brain. It's going to be great. Now, my dad was a college professor. He was a math professor at a little liberal arts college. And I thought he was going to think it was really cool that I was going to go back to school, but that wasn't the reaction I got at all. He said, what are you talking about? You know, you've started your family, you're married. you're at the top of your game, you're making a really good living. You can't just quit your job when you're 28 years old. It's very irresponsible. Why? Why? And I said, because I'm not happy, right? There's this long silence. And he says, what makes you so special? Right? But I got lucky. I got lucky because when I was 45 years old, I was president of the American Enterprise Institute. I had this crazy job where I got to do what I'm doing now. Here's the weirdest thing ever. I'm working right now. This is my job. I'm getting paid to come to talk to you about how to lead a happier life. It's the most amazing blessing ever, right? But I just stumbled across it, so I didn't turn into a 45-year-old casualty, right? So here's the thing. What did I accidentally find? What was it that I accidentally found? Because we have to define it. And how can you avoid the trap? That's what I'm going to tell you. But you're going to have to wait for about 10 minutes. Because I've got some other things I need to tell you about first. Okay? I'm not going to tell you how to be like me. I'm going to tell you how to get the thing that I accidentally got. And you can get it too. Okay. But first, let's talk about the second thing that brings happiness. Okay? The second thing that brings happiness is big events. Okay? Now, this is what you think brings all your happiness. It's the big thing. If you can think right now, you think to yourself right now, okay? Here's an exercise. Think, if if blank could happen in my life, I'd be a lot happier. And it's a thing, right? If blank. It would be if I graduated and got a job. If that girl would marry me, right? If I could avoid getting sick. Right, if you're worried about that. If it's something big and tangible and good that you want, or something big and tangible and bad that you want to avoid. That's what we spend all our time chasing. I mean, that's what people do. We're very goal-oriented creatures. Right? Now, how much of big events at any particular time occupy your happiness? What percentage of your happiness? Answer is 40%. It's huge. It's huge. So your instincts are correct. That you're going to be a lot happier if that thing happens, and you're going to be a lot unhappier if that bad thing happens, right? But here's the problem. You shouldn't work for those things or work against those things. Why? Because one, you're not going to be able to affect them nearly as much as you think you are, and two, it doesn't last. So people work and work and work and work for particular outcomes, and it turns out they don't have very much effectiveness, and you probably experienced that. But the more interesting phenomenon is that big things never last with respect to your happiness, because we always go back to our baseline patterns. Remember your groove. Remember your 48% groove, right? That's where you go, and you go right back. I've met tons of people who've moved to California. Why do you move to California? Why does anybody move to California anymore? It's not for the taxes. It's not for the government. It's not. What is it for? What do you go to California for? The weather, man. Are you kidding? You're in South Bend. Use your heads. So, right, why do you're going to go to California for the weather? How long does weather improve your mood? How long? Unless you're the 4% that has a hypothalamus maladjustment called seasonal affectiveness disorder. But if you're the 96% of people that don't have that thing, right? What'd you say? You said it. 6 months, man. 6 months. 6 months. Don't move to California for the weather. You're going to get 6 months of good things after it and a life of taxes, right? Taxes are forever. Weather's not so much with respect to how happy it makes you feel. Everything is about 6 months. I can double your income today, and it will affect your happiness for 6 months or less. We know this for a fact. Now, okay, fine. Let's get into some more radical stuff. There was a study from the University of Michigan, 1978. It's an old study now, but it's a canonical study that some of you have heard of, that looked at two groups of people, okay? Quadriplegics and lottery winners, okay? Crazy stuff, right? Why? Because they wanted the quintessential big down or big up. And they wanted to know how it affected people's mood. And what did they find? First, quadriplegics, right? Because this is the thing. What's the one accident that you most don't want, right? And the answer is one that would make it impossible for you to be mobile. And so this is what people really fear. The reason they looked at these patients is because they asked a lot of people, what are you most afraid of, right? So here's the question. What happened to the happiness of quadriplegics after their accident? The answer is 6 months after the accident, their happiness was almost all the way up to where it was the day before their accident. Now, they say, yeah, I wish I could walk. Yes, I wish I didn't have the wheelchair. But their happiness is durable. Their happiness comes back. Their spirit of life is back almost to where it was 6 months later. What a miracle. What a miracle. If you wonder if God is working in people's lives, think about that. Think about that. If you wonder what's really important, think about that. Now, lottery winners. This is easier and funnier, because I kind of brought it down here for a second. So let's bring it back up again. Lottery winners, right? There is this party game where, some of you have played it maybe, where you don't know anybody, but you want to break the ice. So you go around the room and you say, if you hit the lottery, what would you do? It's a window onto people's souls. You get to know people instantly when they give you the answer to that question. What would you do if you had 30 million bucks right now? Right? And you always do the same things. I would move closer to my family. I would write that book I've always wanted to write. I would go back to school. When guys are trying to impress girls, you know what they say? I'd start a foundation. No, you wouldn't. So here's what they never say. Yeah, man, you know, if I hit the lottery, you know what I would do? That would be so awesome. I would start by buying a bunch of junk I don't really like and don't need and gives me no satisfaction. And then I think I would get involved in a romantic relationship with somebody who doesn't love me and just likes me for my money. And then I would start a really nasty alcoholic spiral, right? Nobody ever says that, right? But that's what happens, right? That's what happens, right? That's what happens. You've heard the stories, and it's true. People goof up their lives in a huge way when this big good thing happens. All right, why? Why? And it gets back to the opposite of what happened to quadriplegics. 6 months after people win the lottery, they're permanently a little bit less happy than they were the day before they played. The best thing that, now I know that none of you have this, like, I doubt you were all like buying scratch-offs on the way to my lecture here today, right? But there are huge, huge swaths of the population that are. Does Indiana have a lottery? Indiana's lottery, right? Who buys lottery?
Poor people.
Poor people. Now, poor people are being victimized by the government by this, right? Poor people are given a dream that will permanently, if they win, reduce their happiness, and if they lose, will just take their money. Think about this. Think about this. Government is a predator to the poor in these cases. It's a huge problem. And we have the data. Why are people permanently a little bit unhappier the 6 months after they win? The answer is because they don't enjoy spending the money anymore. They don't have any of their old friends, typically, because all of that changes, and they don't really like the things that used to give them real happiness. It's like their fuses have been blown by this great big experience. You know, they're not, shopping, going grocery shopping, hobbies, watching a ball game on TV. I mean, think about what you're going to do this weekend, right? You're going to watch football on Saturday and Sunday, and you're going to hang out with your family, or you're going to talk to your family at least. You're going to do things that you're going to see your friends. You're going to go to Mass. You're going to enjoy this. It's good. Those are the things. That's the life in life, basically. Well, it turns out they don't enjoy the life in life anymore after this big, wonderful thing that they've always wanted happens to them. And so they look for the life in life in other ways. They look for it in more attenuated relationships. They look for it in more expensive, weird things and exotic pets and new cars and houses and drugs and alcohol. And the result is exactly what we see, because they're searching for something that they can't get back. That's the problem. Big events are never anything that we should chase because they don't last, we can't affect them very much, and here's the worst of all. If anything that you get is unearned, that's basically like getting cancer. Never, 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 never take or pursue anything in life that isn't earned. I'm going to come back to that here in a second. But that's a moral lesson that comes to us from the case of lottery and many other cases as well, including inheritance, incidentally, also known as rich people's lottery. I will gladly talk about that in the Q&A if you like. Okay, so 48%. Genes, 40%. Big events. You got 12% left. Does it matter? 12%. Should you work for 12%? The answer is, oh yeah. If you've got 12% that you can directly affect, if you've got 12% that's at your disposal, you better work extra hard to get that right. Don't blow it, right? Don't blow it. 12%. So what's in that 12%? And here's the good news. You can control the 12% by doing 4 things, and those 4 things will give you the best luck on the 40% as well. So I'm going to give you the 40% for free if you do the right thing for your last 12%. But you got to do 4 things. Okay? 4 things with your life. You have to concentrate on 4 things. And the best part is, you're going to pay for it. You basically have to pay attention to and cultivate assiduously 4 things in your life. Okay? You got your pens. Faith, family, friends, and work. Now, I'm not a theologian. I'm not a philosopher. But I've looked at a lot of data. And I've read a lot of studies on this. And believe me, these are the 4 things. Everything else is instrumental. What's not on the list? Money's not on the list. Okay? Money's not on the list. Your mother and your priest told you that money doesn't buy happiness. But it's manifestly true, unless you're desperately poor. Money can buy happiness for the most desperately poor people. Okay? And that's the reason that a social safety net, even paid for by the government, can be a really great thing for the most indigent members of society. And my view is, notwithstanding any other political views I might hold, that it's the right thing to do to have a social safety net that enhances the lives of the poorest people in our society. We can afford it, and it's good. The problem is what happens with money, especially money you didn't earn, when you get above indigence. And the answer is it doesn't bring you any happiness at all. Nothing. You find that going back to 1972, the average American has an increase of 150% in purchasing power. 150%. And that's every income class that's seen increases. You know, you hear the rich are getting richer while the poor are getting poorer. That's a lie. The rich have been getting richer faster than the poor have been getting richer in this country. Okay? How much happier have we gotten since 1972? 150% increase in purchasing power. The answer is 0. Flat. Unhappiness. 1/3 of the population considers itself to be very happy. Individuals. Now, because you're probably thinking, that's the whole population. But let me find out for myself. Give me the money and I'll tell you how happy I got, right? So how happy would you get if you had the money over the course of your career? The answer is, up to middle class, it would relieve your stress. Above middle class, your stress starts to go up again with money. Okay? Money brings no happiness, but it increases stress above the level of middle class. Money simply, for the vast majority of Americans, doesn't bring happiness. It's instrumental to do a lot of other things. What it's good for doing is creating opportunities. So let's talk about that here in a second. 4 institutions, once again. Here are the things that matter. Your faith, your family, your friends, and your work. Okay, now, I'm not going to talk about your faith, your family, and your friends because this is a lecture ultimately about the morality of the free enterprise system. Okay? I will, because I think about that a lot, because I'm trying to work on my life too. Right? And I got kids, and I take my faith seriously, and if you want to talk about any of that stuff, lay it on me in the Q&A. But I want to go straight to institution number 4, which is work. Work brings happiness. If you read Dilbert or watch The Office, you think that work is a drag, right? And working less is better than working more. But that's false. Trivia question. What percentage of Americans either likes or loves their jobs? What percentage of Americans? Right? You're thinking 20%, 25%, 89%. 89% of Americans are either satisfied or very satisfied with their employment. It's extraordinary. I mean, it's incredible. Right? What that means is basically that the woman who made your sandwich today loves her job. The guy you see cutting a lawn on your way home today loves his job, most likely. Answers are, and it's 9 in 10. Now, why? Because I know also that does not vary by income. Poor people and rich people, same. That does not vary by education. College educated, high school educated, the same. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. It doesn't matter if you're a Protestant or a Catholic. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist or religious. It's the same. People who appreciate their jobs. Now, I want to take back the atheist or religious just for a second, and I'm going to come back to that here in a minute because I did tell you that faith is important and there's a little interaction. So I'm going to come back to that here in a second too. Meantime, work is great. And what you do is really important. So why is work so great? Not because of money. I already told you that. It's not because of the money. It's because of something else. And what it is, the thing that people like about their work, is the secret to being the guy on the dirt road. That's the secret. It's the secret to happiness. It's called earned success. Earned success is nothing about money. It's the belief that you're creating value with your life and value in the lives of other people. That's the secret. If you believe that you're creating value with your life and value in the lives of other people, you will enjoy your work, you'll pursue your happiness, you'll earn your success, you'll be a happier person. There is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works. Ecclesiastes 3:22. Earned success. It's such a profound and important concept that if you take two people, this is according to the University of Chicago, General Social Survey data, the gold standard for social survey data, and you take two people who are precisely the same age, sex, race, religion, same level of education, and they both say that they have earned their success, but one earns 8 times as much money as the second, they will be equally likely to say that they're very happy about their lives. Money can't buy happiness. Earned success can bring happiness, does bring happiness. Now, I've studied social entrepreneurs my whole career. These are nonprofit do-gooders. These are people who are working for tap water and ramen noodles. These are people who are, saving souls and pulling kids out of poverty and teaching people to read and going to sub-Saharan Africa and doing microloans or cleaning up the environment, you name it. They're earning their success because they're creating value, however they denominate it. Not in money, however they denominate it. That's the secret to their happiness. That's what you have to do. You have to figure out the denomination of the value that God wants you to create in your life. If you figure that out, you can earn your success and you crack the code. Then your work will be an institution of permanent happiness in your life. You will dominate your 12%. Don't leave out faith, family, and community. That's the secret. So, how do we get it? How do we get earned success? How do we get it? How does everybody get earned success? You need 2 things. First, you need a system. Okay? Got to have a system. It's one thing for me to say, hey, everybody, go earn your success. Something else entirely for you to be able to do it. You need a system that matches your skills with your passions. You need to be able to choose your own profession. You need to be able to be rewarded for your hard work and personal responsibility. You need to pay a price and bear a sacrifice when you make a mistake such that you can learn. Now, not catastrophically, so you're out on the street, evidently. But you must be able to see the rewards and the demerits from your basic actions. And the best news is that system exists. The system that allows you to earn your success. The system that is what the founders meant when they talked about the pursuit of happiness. It exists. It's called the free enterprise system. This is the only system that's ever been created where people can systematically earn their success. It's an extraordinary thing. And it's not just about your happiness, by the way. It's also about what you're able to do with that system when you don't even know it. When I was a kid, I was a little kid. God bless you. 1970, when I was a little kid. What was the third world? The third world was pictures in the National Geographic. It was starving children with distended bellies and flies on their faces. It was starvation. It was horrible. Today, what do my kids know about the third world? It's 9% economic growth. It's jobs that are going from America to there. Now, there are a lot of people in need and starving, to be sure. And you join me in believing that as you did for the least of these, our brothers and sisters, you do for our Lord. I know you believe that, but the world is better. How much better? From 1970 to today, the percentage of the world living on $1 a day or less, starvation level poverty, the percentage of the world's population living on $1 a day or less has declined by 80% since 1970. I bet you didn't know that. Most people don't know that. An 80% decline. It is the world's greatest anti-poverty achievement in history, and it's largely unremarked. What happened? You always hear the world's getting worse. It's not. The world's getting better. The world is getting better. Why? Is it because of the United Nations? Is it? It's not a laugh line. It's not. It's Is it not? Is it because of the World Bank? Is it because of the IMF? These are important institutions. But the answer is no, no, no. It's because of 5 things. Globalization, free trade, property rights, rule of law, and entrepreneurship. It was American-style free enterprise that started to spread culturally around the world after 1970. 662 million Chinese people have been pulled out of the most desperate poverty since 1980 because of free trade. Think about that. Now, we talk a lot about materialism, and that's important. As Catholics, we have to consider these things. But billions of people pulled out of absolute poverty, you did that. You didn't even know it. See, the thing is, charity is really important. Charity is critical. It's a theological virtue. But you also have to work for the poor when you're not trying, when you're asleep. The only way to pull billions of people out of the most desperate poverty is to have a system that's so good that other people see it and they share it, and that's what they want. And that's the American free enterprise system that's working right now, so that somebody you'll never meet, who lives in the part of the world that you've never heard of and that you'll never see, doesn't go to bed hungry tonight. You built that. God bless you for building that. And God bless the system that makes that possible. So, we need a system, and we've got it. And we also need one more thing, which is faith. St. Jose Maria Escrivá tells us that there is no human undertaking which cannot be sanctified. Your work is a prayer. It just is. When you're working to create value with your life and value in the lives of other people, you're doing nothing that can be more in God's image. Think what this means to work in God's image and to do it in every productive moment of your day. And that way, work truly is a prayer. Work truly is a blessing. And it can be part of your faith. I learned that. You know how I learned that? I learned that from a composer, from a music composer. The greatest composer who ever lived, in my view, is Johann Sebastian Bach. A lot of you have heard of him. A lot of you have heard his music. Bach's music is great, not because he invented a new harmonic system, but because he was the greatest exemplar of the high Baroque. Technically and inspirationally, nobody could touch him. He was so productive. He wrote a cantata for orchestra and chorus for every Sunday in the lectionary. Imagine that. He just fell off his pen. And he had 20 kids. I mean, that's productive. I mean, he was just amazing. He was just amazing. And at one point when he was old, when he was near the end of his life, Bach was asked, "Why do you write music? Why do you write music?" And Bach said something interesting to me. I heard this when I was in my 20s, and it had a huge impact on me. Bach didn't say, "It's a living." Bach didn't say, "'Cause I'm really talented music and I found this is the best way to pay the rent." Bach didn't say, "'Cause I like music." Bach said, "I write music for the glory of God and the enjoyment of man." Right? Think about it. Now, what was the most important thing in Bach's life? And the answer was his Lutheran faith. So, he was almost there, right? What was Bach paraphrasing? Luke 10:27. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's your job. That's your work every single day. Glorify God and serve others. And then you will earn your success. And then your work will be a prayer. Here's the bottom line. I'll turn it over to you. The keys to your happiness are faith, family, friends, and work. Spend all your time on that. Just get rid of everything else. Now, don't spend your time on anything else. I mean, okay, I know, you have to get up in the morning, you got to go to class, you have to worry about money, you should take care of your health, you should fight for liberty. There's a lot of stuff you should do that I do too. But you know what? At the end of the day, the intrinsic goods that will bring you the greatest happiness are faith, family, community, and work. This institution teaches that. You know, that's really why I'm glad I'm here. That's why I would be happy if my kids have the grades to get in. Because this is an institution that takes faith, family, community, and work seriously. Why does it do that? It's not because of administrators, it's not because of the faculty, it's because of you. It's because of the witness of your lives and what you're going to do. I mean, you're going to go out and people are going to say, I mean, I know you, you're Notre Dame, you're going to go out and people are going to say, where'd you go to college? And you say, I went to Notre Dame. And every place else is terrible, right? Don't deny it, right? But they're going to see in the living witness of your life your priorities. And if your priorities are the priorities of faith, family, community, and work, and you're the leaders that you're being trained to be, then people are going to follow your witness. And when they follow your witness, guess what they're going to get? They're going to live like you, and they're going to be happier. That's a big deal, because it's really about how we serve others. Your lives and your values make a happier world. And for that, I'm really grateful. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, we have a good 20 minutes or so for questions. We have a tradition here in the social program. We reserve our first questions, our first several questions, if possible, for undergraduate students. So, and the undergraduates, and when you ask your questions, large room, if you could stand up, tell us who you are and where you are at Notre Dame. So,
and put your statement in the form of a question.
Yeah.
I'm David Booth. I'm a sophomore biochemistry major.
Yeah.
So you stress that faith is one of the integral parts to being happy. Would you argue that there is a certain, like obviously you stress Catholicism.
Right.
Would you argue that other branches of faith that aren't Catholicism are conducive to the free market system and therefore presumably happiness?
Yeah.
Dr. Brooks, I'm going to ask you to just summarize the question real quickly.
Okay. So, is it that do other faiths bring as much happiness as Catholicism? Is that your question?
That, or are there other faiths which fit into your conception of the free market system and therefore
There are other faiths that are more or less conducive to, as we understand it, to free enterprise or capitalism, but that has relatively little to do with the faith per se. That has more to do with the places in the world where they're practiced and how far along they are in the development of the free enterprise system. So those links are really quite tenuous. One of the things that we do know, however, is that it's very clear that other faiths bring happiness too. They just do. And I had a very interesting conversation. It was kind of a sort of a tectonic moment for me. In February, I went to Dharamsala, India. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the monastery of the Dalai Lama. It's where he lives in exile in India since the late 1950s. And we discussed this. We discussed the morality of economic systems. We're doing a big collaboration together in February in Washington, D.C., where we're going to have a bunch of conferences and we're going to work together. I get to, co-host conferences with the Dalai Lama where he'll say, it's good to be compassionate. And I'll say, and our next speaker is, But it was interesting because we talked about precisely this. And he's written books about happiness. He talks about the nature of happiness, and you boil it all down. He says, how do you lead a life that is equilibrated in basic happiness? And you start with moral living. You have basic practices that are healthy, and you have wisdom, faith, family, friends, and work. Basically, these are the things that he talks about as well. These are not fundamental differences in terms of the fundamentals. Now, obviously, there are theological differences. I got my favorite faith. So do you. This is, I assume. And people get to find their own way. The beauty of it is the multiplicity of ways that faith can be made manifest in the happiness of different people. Yes, back here.
Sophomore sociology major. You talked about how 89% of people say that they're happy or satisfied with their jobs. Mm-hmm. And then you also talked about how people living in poverty, money can make them happier. Mm-hmm. How does that reflect with minimum wage workers? Are they still happy because a percentage of them are living in poverty?
Yeah, there are two things. There have happiness effects that are going in opposite directions. Poverty, which creates a whole lot of pressure, attenuates happiness considerably, but work itself is a big deal. So I've looked at a comparative sample where you have half of the sample are working poor people and half are on welfare, and they have the same income, and you hold all their demographics the same. You find that the welfare recipients spend 25% more of their time feeling depressed about their lives than the working poor. Work is a really, really big deal. Now, What do we do so that more people can actually get out of the pressures of absolute poverty? That's my job. I mean, I run a think tank in Washington, D.C. about how to improve people's lives, right? And the emphasis that we have is through the free enterprise system and through greater entrepreneurship, through greater job creation, all this good stuff, right? But it's also about the things, the direct interventions in people's lives. It's the reason I made a pitch that I recommend to all of you, that if you've thought that the social safety net for the poor is a bad idea, I ask you to reconsider that. But I also ask you to reconsider really poorly advised policies like increases in minimum wage, which throw people actually out of work, when we have better policies that are more expensive, like supplementing incomes from the government itself, that can make work pay. The point is basically this. There's nothing antithetical to being pro-poor by being pro-free enterprise. The key thing is we have to link those two things up together. And if in your examination of conscience, you believe that your pro-free enterprise policies actually do help the poor the most, then you're really on the right track. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Lincoln Robinson. I'm a junior political science major.
I have a question about I guess it's a more economics-based question.
Yep.
So in recent years, we've had a lot of people become unemployed and just generally fall out of the workforce. So how does that tie into being able to, I guess, earn your success? Because if those people, the longer they're out of the workforce, the more likely they're going to just become unemployable, period.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't seem to me like a regular free enterprise system, would be able to just solve that. You
Yep.
know? So how do you kind of fix that without, I guess, I don't know, how would you fix that?
It's a great question, and you've hit on something that's really the point. The real problem with our non-recovery in this country is not economic, it's moral. That's the problem with our non-recovery in this country, with policies that have actually led to the smallest number of Americans in the workforce since 1978. Think about it. 63.2% of American adults are in the workforce today. That's the lowest percentage of Americans working that we've had since the 1970s, since the bad old days of the 1970s. Who cares? Can we afford that? Yeah. I mean, you listen to Republican politicians and we can afford that. Are you kidding me? We have tons of money in this country sloshing around. We have the most valuable assets in the history of the world, and we have relatively low tax rates. Let's be honest here, right? The problem is not the money. The problem is what we're doing to those people's lives. The chronically unemployed. I mean, think, a third of the population is not working. We have the lowest number of men in the workforce that we've had since the Great Depression. Lowest number of men in the workforce. It's a scandal. And we make it sound as if it's okay, they got food stamps, it's okay, they have unemployment insurance. It's not okay. They need jobs. They need to work. Their souls need to work. That's a fact. That's an empirical, that's not my moral ideas, that's not my philosophy of life, that's not my theology, that's an empirical fact. They need to work. So what are you going to do? The answer is not what we're doing. Not what we're doing. We're creating incentives, or I should say disincentives to create employment. We're creating disincentives for people to work. We're moving away from a culture in which we're asking people to work more for the benefits that they get, and that's a huge problem. Again, what's the acid test? The acid test is, are we helping the people who are vulnerable? Are we fighting for the people who can't fight for themselves? It's real easy to say, yeah, I'm shoveling dough at them. I'm shoveling government benefits at them. Lower middle class people, they're out of work for a long time. I'm giving them what they need. But that's just materialism. That's just subsistence. That's just getting by. That's no good for people's lives. Now, the problem is that today we basically have a conspiracy of taking poor people for granted and helping them subsist and trying to ignore them. I mean, that's basically what goes on in Washington, D.C., where I live. Where I live so you don't have to, basically. That's the problem is that we don't there's no moral salience of the real problem that the poor are suffering from, which is their inability to create value with their lives. Taking that seriously means much more, sometimes more expensive, but certainly more creative approaches to the way that we form human capital, the way we disequilibrate, we rock the schools in this country, the way that we treat entrepreneurs and job creation in this country, the way that we talk about culture in this country. Trivia question for you. What holds the poor back the most? What holds the poor back the most from getting ahead? Culture. Culture holds the poor back the most. Fatherlessness, dropping out of school, criminality, drug use, faith, family, community, work. These are cultural issues, and that's what holds poor people back today. And guess what we don't want to talk about? Guess what we're worried about talking about? Is exactly these types of things. This is not trying to impose bourgeois morality on poor people. This is saving their lives. You know what? You are your brother's keeper. And that's the reason we have to talk about everything that matters in their lives. That's the reason you should be a warrior for school reform. That's why you should be tough as nails about making a good entrepreneurial environment, especially for the poor who want to be entrepreneurs. And that's why you need to talk about culture. And when we start going along those lines, then it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, then you're really working for the people who need you the most. And we can start getting past that. We can get to unconventional solutions that Democrats and Republicans at present just don't want to touch. We need your generation, we need you. Right here, and then we'll go back here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Maggie Adama. I'm a senior political science major, and I was just wondering if there was a difference between the European work week, which I don't know how many empirical data, but you've just heard that it is shorter, and we hear about people in France and other countries having more leisure time, and if how that reflects their happiness level, and if it's more about just having, even if it's 4 days of solid work, if that's okay, or if, how that leisure time plays into that.
Yeah. So there are, thank you. Okay, she's asking about leisure, the difference between leisure and labor if you compare Europeans and Americans and how that actually affects their happiness, those particular types of differences between the two cultures. And it's true, the Europeans work less than Americans do, right? And there's an old saying that we live to work and they work to live, right? Well, the truth is they live okay, but they don't work very much at all. So that's Europeans they retire when they're like 29 and work 5 hours a week, and they wonder why the economy's no good. It's weird. So, but the truth is there are cultural differences when it comes to these types of things, and I'm really reluctant to go to a Swede and say, you know what you need? You need the American-style free enterprise system. Just like I don't like it when Swedes come to us and say, all you need is really, really great trains, or whatever they say, right? It's like, if your trains run, it's all good. The truth is, what's the difference between Sweden and America? And the answer is all the entrepreneurs from Sweden went to St. Paul, Minnesota. I mean, we're a country largely based on the phenomenon of immigration, which makes the mutation, the entrepreneurial gene, no joke. There's data on this that shows that immigrants tend to be entrepreneurial, and they're concentrated in the United States in ways that we don't see in other countries around the world. And so guess what? We have a different culture. Different stuff makes us gives us happiness. Faith, family, community, and work mean different things in different places. Point number one. Point number two is this. Work isn't just doing stuff for money. It isn't. Just ask a mom who stays home with 7 kids. It's not about going out into the workplace and making a paycheck. Work is creating value with your life and value in the lives of other people. That's the apostolate. And it takes all kinds of different forms. It's volunteering, it's working in communities, it's being a parent, it's creating a beautiful work of art. That's how you can work an actual value-creating apostolate that effectively is the work that I'm talking about. Are they doing that in France? Well, they're certainly not having 8 kids, because there was a baby born like 30 years ago, and that was it. But besides that, there's a lot that we can't judge about other cultures. We can judge that about ours and work for it in ours. Thank you. It's a wonderful question. Yes, sir.
I just have kind of 2 questions. My name is Kenny. So thank you for coming, first of all. I'm Kenny. I'm a sophomore consulting and economics major. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. My questions for you were basically, how do we move to the next step in kind of making the American public in general aware of these concepts? Also, how do we deal with, I guess, kind of like the worldwide problems that we see with work in other countries? Like, is there anything that we can do about that, or like, how do we respond? How can we respond best to that?
Well, part of the response to work in other countries is what we talked about a minute ago. But how can we take these values and make them more manifest in American society today, not because it'll bring our economy back, but because it will bring people's lives back, and people are going to get a little bit more of what you get. In other words, is Good Samaritanism going to be better on the basis of what we've heard here? And the answer is almost certainly not through political war, not through joining a particular political party, not even just by running for Congress. It's by you being carriers of these values. I mean, you're the foot soldiers of this, and here's the good news. It's really fun, because you get to lead a better life. Lead a life that other people see. Lead a life that other people wonder about and want. And then give it up. Give up your secret. Say, here's the deal. Here's what I do. I got 4 things, guys. I got 4 things, right? Raise your kids with these 4 things. You know, so I got kids, and I try to do it. And, you know, this is the, you know, knowledge is power. And my wife and I actually think about these 4 investments. We think about it like a balanced portfolio, right? What am I neglecting? Incidentally, what do people generally neglect? Okay, you're in economics and consulting. What are you going to neglect, man? I mean, what are you going to emphasize to the exclusion of the other 3 values? What are you going to do too much of?
I'd say I definitely do too much work.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, look, consulting, it's great that you're doing that. But I can tell you right now, this is diagnostic. You need to pay attention to your faith and your family and your friends a lot. And everybody needs to be thinking about the balance that they have. Make your life a torch that people can see, that illuminates the happiness in your life and that you can share with others. And by doing that, you'll be the foot soldiers for these particular values. Now, I also would urge you, I would recommend this to you. Doesn't matter what your political views are or what political party you support. We have a moral obligation to the free enterprise system. We just do. I gave you the facts on how this helps people. This is not an economic alternative. It's a moral imperative that we make this work for more people. And that means we fight for the values, but we also fight to make sure that people can enjoy those values, so that people aren't cut off from that system, so that we recognize falling mobility in this country that's making it harder for people to get into the system. Right? That's what we need to do. So it should be a settled issue that free enterprise is good. What's not settled is whether or not everybody gets to enjoy it, and you can be the warriors to make sure that more people can enjoy it. That's my recommendation. Right here, and then we'll go back here.
Yeah, my name's Steven. I'm a senior political science and history major, and I'm a fellow Catholic. Mm-hmm. And
that's weird here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems kind of antithetical to like a lot of the New Testament stories to support free enterprise. I mean, you have Jesus saying like, just give all your money to the poor, leave and follow me. You've got stories in the Acts of the Apostles and the epistles about like living in communities and sharing all you have.
Sure.
And like the church traditionally has been very slow to embrace capitalism. You've got like Orat et Labora and all these other church documents. And I don't think the church has really ever come out fully in favor of the full free enterprise system. So like, how would you reconcile your Catholic beliefs with your faith in the free market system?
My faith is in Jesus Christ. It's not in the free market system. Okay. All of it, 100% of it, right? I do believe, based on my observations, that the free enterprise system is a great force for good when we have the cultural underpinnings for it. When you and I work for the right moral environment, when you and I are fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, when you and I lead well-ordered lives based on principles of ethics and honesty and kindness and thoughtfulness and goodness, then the free enterprise system is like, it's a miracle for more people. Right? So that's what I believe. Okay, now, but back to your great observation that you make. You know, it sounds like it's not consistent with the Gospels, right? Sell all that you own and follow me, right? But, you know, Christ didn't say, give all you have to Caesar. No. He didn't say, give it all to the tax man and follow me. No. He said, give all that you have and follow me. So here's the question for you. Are you giving all that you can for Christ? Are you giving your whole career and all of your heart and all of your energy and all of your affection? Are you putting it all in? Because you know what? When you go to work, when you create jobs, when you do more for more people, you're giving it all voluntarily. And it's only up to you whether you're following Him. It's only up to you. That's the key thing. Now, I'm not twisting the gospel. I'm trying to understand it in the context of the modern American economy, you know? Because you can't, other people who are people of goodwill can understand it in different ways, to be sure. And they can say, well, what we do today is we would have much higher taxes. But that is hard for me to understand. That doesn't make sense to me. But I can look at you, and you can tell me about your life, and you're going to tell me how you are a Christ follower in all the things that you do, and in your job, and you're creating value in other people's lives, and you are sanctifying your every act, and you're giving it up for God. That sounds an awful lot like what Jesus was talking about to me. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Abby Davis. I'm a sophomore political science major, and I just wanted to follow up on David's question, which is the first question I asked about whether the particular religion matters.
Mm-hmm.
And in response to his question, you emphasized the importance of living a compassionate and moral life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to sort of push on that and ask whether the really important part of faith is a relationship, you know, a prayerful relationship with God or with a, you know, divine transcendent being, or if it's the real importance is on a moral and compassionate life, and that if that is the case, that it's really a moral, compassionate life, whether there's a difference between religious people and people who have secular moral philosophies.
It's a good question, you know, and this is as old as theology itself. This is the difference between Christianity and Judaism. This is the difference between Calvinism and Catholicism, or trying to wrestle between faith and works. This is the difference between Paul and James. I mean, this is, you know, figuring that one out is the hardest thing that you can do, and it's basically that's your job, is to figure that one out. Here's what an economist would say. So, an economist would say, faith and works, they're endogenous. They feed back on each other, right? If you don't have faith, your works aren't right. If you don't have works, you're not making manifest your faith. That's a cop-out, right? The truth is we're trying to work this out all the time. But here's I'm going to say it's kind of a curveball right now, right? Because this is something I'm wrestling with, and I don't have it figured out. So yesterday, the Holy Father, he gave an interview to an Italian newspaper. Did you see this? And they said, can an atheist go to heaven? And they said, yeah. What does he have to do? He has to follow his conscience. What's that all about? I don't know, because this kind of reflects on what you're talking about. And I don't understand. I don't understand what he meant yet. I heard about a guy, I heard from this guy, that a historian, who said that during the Nazi regime, that the government would pressure kids to follow their conscience and turn in their parents to the authorities if they were hiding Jews. Think about this. The government said, follow your conscience. I don't care if they're your parents, you have to do the right thing. And kids turned in their parents, and their parents went to concentration camps. Your conscience is a dangerous thing. Your conscience is not true north. Your conscience depends on the right relationship with God, doesn't it? It's an open question. I submit that to you for your consideration. Please go read the interview, because I think it's instructive to all of us. I don't know what I think yet.
Just one more.
Yeah, right here. My old friend.
Just a quick question. That so much data that you've read, and you mentioned that women are statistically happier than men.
Yeah.
Have you come up with any reason why? Or anything that you found out?
Hey, look, I said that was your problem. I said so, and so therefore the last question to me is going to be the question to somebody else. I want to hear your hypothesis that explains why women have been converging on the average misery of men over the past 40 years. Somebody lay it on me. Mr. Robinson.
I would say that since the 60s, I think you mentioned, they've become more like men in terms of what they're expected to do, what society expects them to do, what they're able to do, etc. So in their lives, in their day-to-day business, I would say they've become closer to them.
Good.
Divorce rates have gone up. I think you made a point clear earlier when you said that divorced women are the only group that's less happy than their counterparts, divorced men.
The divorce has done it. Mm-hmm.
I think there's clearly also been a rise in divorces.
Okay, women are living like men. Men have unhappier lives. Axiomatically, they're going to get less happy. divorce makes women less happy, and there's a rise in divorce. Everybody knows about that, although it's kind of complicated, but still, I take your point. Any other hypotheses? This, my friend, is called social science, right? This is actually, if you were in my line of work, you didn't go out and get a bunch of data, and you'd write a paper on it that subjects these ideas to empirical scrutiny. The truth is that there's support for both of what you have said, and a key thing is going to be for women and for everybody else for that matter to figure out how to reverse that trend, because it's not good, it's not what we want, and it gives us an opportunity to create more good. We've run out of time. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking